Good morning, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. We do have a guest joining us this morning, so I want to be respectful of her time and all of yours as well. With this, we do expect this presentation to take up most of the time this morning, this morning for our call. I'll stay on an extra 15-20 minutes after the call to answer any questions that anybody may have about this presentation or other general questions about the assessment plan. So we will stick around, make sure that you have an opportunity to get your questions answered. But I'm going to go ahead and get started this morning. I do have a few updates that I want to share before I turn it over to our guest. Let me just bring this up. So the format stays the same. I'll provide some general updates, and then we will move on to the topic-specific information this morning. And then I will stick around an extra 15-20 minutes after today's meeting to get any of your questions answered. So the big reminder is that the Crisis Services survey for the legislative requirements section is due tomorrow. So if you have any questions about that, we'll take it after the meeting. But just a reminder that the survey and the question 2 spreadsheets are due by the end of day tomorrow. We had an update meeting with our folks over at HPIO yesterday, and we have set the first 2 webinar dates. We're going to do this a couple of different, we're going to give you access to this in a couple of different ways. The first is that these will be presented live. We have the dates there available to you, but they'll also be recorded and they'll be placed on our website for future viewing. So we will present these live, and if you have any opportunities or have any questions that you would like to have answered, we'll answer them live during the webinars. But again, these will be recorded and placed on our website. So the first one is set for Thursday, October. Whoops, that's not right. Thursday, October. Let me see here. Make sure I put the wrong date in there. So Thursday, October 27th, my apologies, October 27th, from 12:30 to 1:30. So we'll send out a calendar invite for those. The second of the 4 will be held Wednesday, November 30th from 2:30 to 3:30. And then actually we're going to meet on Monday morning to talk about the remaining 2, which will be scheduled for December and January. But those will be presented live if you have the opportunity to watch them live. If not, they'll be recorded and we'll place them on our website where all the other community assessment plan resources are kept.
What's that?
So that's all I have right now for updates. But I do want to turn it over and give plenty of time.
I know.
Hold on a second. Still meeting some people. So I will turn it over to my colleague, Jamie Carmichael from the Ohio Department of Health. Jamie is joining us this morning to talk about health improvement zones. This is something that Director Chris thought was very valuable information. And we are hoping that you could use this information and the dashboards that they have created as part of your assessment and planning process. So we able to touch base with Jamie. She was able to free up some time on her schedule. So I appreciate you being here this morning, Jamie. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the group, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. It's really great to be here with you today. I'm Jamie Carmichael. I'm our Chief Health Opportunity Advisor at the Ohio Department of Health. It's just a really long, fancy title. That means that we work on health equity here. I'm joined today by my colleague, Patty Clements, and I will allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having us. Again, my name is Patty Clements. I work with Jamie over in the Office of Health Opportunity, and my role centers around elevating the narrative around the social determinants of health. And so there's a laundry list of activities that we're doing to help bring awareness to what social determinants of health mean to to individual health, and getting the opportunity to do these types of presentations is one of those. So we look forward to sharing with you.
Thanks, Patty. So I know some of the names on here. I can't see your faces, but I know some of your names because in my previous role, I worked at the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and had a wonderful experience there. And I know that what I heard there, as well as in my previous experience at Job and Family Services, is that a lot of the mental health outcomes that people are experiencing are impacted by multiple systems outside of just mental health access and quality, right? There's a lot of other stuff happening. So I'm gonna talk today a little bit about the social determinants of health. We're gonna talk about the Ohio Health Improvement Zones. Patty's gonna do a demo for you of our new social determinants of health dashboard, which I think is amazing and I hope will be beneficial to you in your planning. And hopefully we'll have some discussion. So I know some of you out there are not shy people. And so I'm counting on you to speak up and be interactive with us today. All right, I'm gonna try to share my screen. All right. Okay. So the Office of Health Opportunity is a new office. It was formed in response to Governor DeWine's Minority Health Strike Force. And we've been around a little over a year now. And so we're still very new, as you can imagine, but we have one mission, and that is to ensure that all of Ohio's communities have a fair and a just opportunity to thrive and to be healthy. We are organized and our work is organized into 4 core objectives. There's basically 4 things that I think about every day when I get out of bed. That's how are we going to establish equity as a pillar of Ohio's public health system? And I see you all as key to Ohio public health system, right? So you might not be a local health department, but you are absolutely a public health provider and systems partner. We're trying to improve clinical experiences and outcomes for the most vulnerable Ohioans, especially for minorities and people with disabilities. I had the opportunity to chair the governor's task force on eliminating racial disparities in infant mortality. As a part of that work, we traveled around the state. We talked to over 200 Black men and women who had experience with infant death or who had had a recent birth. And the one thing that came out, whether we were talking to people with doctorate degrees or if we were talking to people who hadn't made it through high school, if we were in Zanesville or if we were in Toledo, the one theme across 30 focus groups was that Black people are treated really poorly in clinical settings. That just came up over and over and over again. And then the data and the work that we've been doing with the disability community, lo and behold, shows us the same thing, the same experience for people with disability. And so that's a key pillar of the work we're focused on here. Patty has mentioned that she works on elevating and addressing those social determinants of health. That's a key pillar of the work we're doing. And then ensuring that equitable response to COVID-19 is our office's responsibility. All right, so we do a whole bunch of stuff to support health equity, and we're working in kind of bands. So we're working to support health equity in our local health departments. We have learning collaboratives, and we do consultation, and we're building tools for them. We're doing a lot of similar work at the state level with our state health department. And one of the things I'm going to talk to you guys about here is solicitation guidance. But and then we're also doing this work across all of the administration. So Patty leads a group of around 40 mid to higher level professionals in state government agencies, from Department of Development to the Department of Agriculture to Medicaid, Department of Education. We're all around the table trying to help these folks understand how what they do every day at the Department of Tax and at Ohio Department of Natural Resources impacts the health and the mental health of Ohioans. So that's a quick summary of our work and what we're focused on. But let's take a breath here. I want to see If I want to, level set and make sure we're all on the same page about this definition of health, right? A lot of people think that health is just this absence of disease. It's not. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So, quick question by show of hands. Get your little virtual hands ready. How many people on this call today would say that they're healthy? That you personally meet that definition of health. Okay, John, get some of what you got. So I can't see how many, it looks like we have 2 hands up out of like 50 people. Health is a really hard thing to obtain. And if you have a lot of barriers in your environment, if you have a lot of barriers in your experiences, it's even harder to maintain this high standard of what it means to be healthy. And in the United States, man, we work really hard. We spend a lot of money on health care. This chart right here is showing us that the US, this is us over here, we're the tall bar. We spend a lot of money on healthcare. Our healthcare system in this country is amazing. I will tell you all, I had the opportunity to travel abroad. I was in Southeast Asia, and I got injured. And they were like, do you want some aspirin to put on that? Because there's no urgent care or ER. But our country has an amazing healthcare system. That's how we were able to create a vaccine in a year for a hugely devastating disease, right? We spend a lot of money on it. But if you come over here to how long we live and looking at life expectancy in comparison to these other OECD countries, we're this black dotted line at the bottom. That's us. Far below others who spend a lot less than we do. So that's interesting. So what are we missing here? We're gonna get into that in a sec. So not only are we, really focused on health and health care in our country, we're not meeting those marks, and those life expectancy outcomes, they're not the same for everyone. We're going to take a look at that in a second. But first, I want to level set with another definition of equity, because we're talking about health equity. So there is a group called Race Forward, and the gentleman who's the CEO of Race Forward is an amazing speaker if you get a chance to check him out. And I love how he talks about equity. I'm going to take a crack at it here. So by show of hands, how many people have been to a sporting event ever, or maybe a show like the theater or like a big auditorium? Anybody? Just me and Diane? Everybody, most of us have been in these environments. What happens at intermission, at halftime? Where does everybody go? Yeah, John says the bathroom. I saw that. Yeah, we all go to the bathroom. What is the difference in that experience between men and women? Anybody? Anybody want to take a crack at it? Drop it in the chat. Mic on. What do you think the biggest difference? Yeah, Kelly says the line. Patty says how long we wait. Women wait a lot longer in line than men do in restrooms. And let's think about that, right? That's because we've been really focused on equality. A lot of stadiums, 50% of the population are men, 50% are women. So 50% of the bathrooms go to men, 50% of the bathrooms go to women. But because of a whole host of things, right? From how women use restrooms to who designed restrooms, the wait turns out to be different for women. It's longer, it's inequitable. And so a lot of what we're talking about with equity is how do we reduce the inequity that we see between populations? And so, you'll see now in a lot of places, they're being designed so that like for every men's restroom that's built, 1.5 women's restrooms are built, right? So that's an attempt to achieve equity in that experience for women. So I think that's a great example of equity. I hope you do too. I can't see your faces, so I'm hoping that you guys, there's like a recognition there. I just want to stop here and say that equity isn't just about race. So one of the things, it's definitely huge inequities from racial groups to racial group and ethnicity, ethnic group to ethnic group. But that's not the only disparity that we see. One of the health disparities that gets talked about a lot, and rightly so, is infant mortality. So we know that, you know, for every 5 white babies on average who die before their first year of life, 15 Black babies die. But when we pull out rural white women out of that white women number, for rural white women, it's 9. Right? So we have these disparities that exist along racial and ethnic lines, and we have a lot of data on that too. It also allows us to see the disparities really clearly. But we also know that there are these disparities by geography. And probably the most significant one is life expectancy, right? Going back to that life expectancy chart, we could see that we have worse life expectancy than all of these other countries. But even within Ohio, that's not spread out equally. So I don't know who here is from Northeast Ohio. And can I see if we have any, do we have anybody from anywhere in Northeast Ohio? Like Linda Lamp, Anthony, John. All right, if any of you guys are from Stowe, the Stowe area, congratulations, you're gonna like live forever. You're going to be the ripe old age of 89. That is the average life expectancy in that community, which is quite good, I would say. However, if you're here in Columbus on the west side, in the Franklinton community, the average life expectancy is 60. I don't know the median age of folks on this call. I just turned 45 last month, and 60 seems super close. That doesn't seem very old to me, and it's a huge disparity, right? It's almost 30 years difference just based on where people live. Oops. I'm trying to go to the next slide. There we go. So why is this happening, right? Why are some people healthy and others are not? Some of it's biology, right? A small percentage of, man, I got bad genes. But some of it is what kind of care people have, what kind of quality care they have access to, when do they have access to it. Some of it is around choices and healthy behaviors. I'm going to come right back to that. But the lion's share here is really about the social and economic factors, the context. It's about the context in which health happens. And I would say that even these healthy behaviors are impacted by those same contextual factors, right? How much education do I have? How much money do I make? Am I able to live in a neighborhood that's safe? Are there sidewalks? Or do I live on a highway where it's unsafe for me to walk? Is there a lot of violence? Then we have these issues around social and community context. Do I have connections to loving relationships, healthy relationships? Am I, living in an environment with untreated mental illness, right? These things all impact health outcomes. So any questions about that? Anybody want to push back on that? Because that's fine too. I think that there's room to, I've had people push back on this concept, but just curious if anybody has any thoughts on this before I move on. There's 2 hands up, but I don't know if your hands are up on purpose or not. But so I'll call on you, Deanna or Katie. Nope. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take a look at how this kind of plays out. Suicide completion in Black girls. So obviously, so I will tell you, I have two beautiful Black daughters, and this statistic, these statistics completely freak me out. But suicide among adolescent girls has increased a lot. And there's a disparity there. So it's increased. The suicide rates for Black children, very young Black children, are nearly 2 times higher than they are for white children, right? And that's the disparity. So when we're talking about disparity, we're talking about measuring the gap between the target population and the larger population. So I want you to, it's not, the reason that people always end up getting compared to white is because there's more white people. It's the larger population, and that's how we measure a disparity. We're measuring the gap between the majority population and the other population. So I just want to be clear on that. Let's take a look at that. So you all may have seen this slide. HPIO has a slide that I kind of adapted this from. We know what drives suicide completion. You all know better than I do. Hopelessness, anxiety, access to lethal means, isolation, suicidal ideation. These are the things that we deal in every day, that you all deal in every day. But what's driving hopelessness and anxiety and depression and access to lethal means? There's all of this other stuff happening that drives the drivers. Are you exposed to toxic chemicals as a young child? Do you have a parent who's incarcerated? Do you make a decent living? Do you live in a household where people make a decent living? Are you exposed to toxic stress and racism? Have you been exposed to previous suicides? All of these things drive the drivers. These are the social determinants of health. This is the context in which those drivers are exasperated, right? Any questions about that? So what are we trying to do? What are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about that? We're trying to kind of move from this place of inequality, right? Where women are waiting in bathrooms in lines much longer than men. And people in Stowe have a much longer life expectancy than people in Franklinton. And we're trying to take those inequalities and government, you all are all government, and you know this. Government is, and rightly so, obsessed with procedural justice. That's how we avoid corruption. Everybody gets the same thing. You come in the door, I don't care who you are, what your context is, but we're going to give you the same thing. But we know that's not how we get to equity. So right now we're in this space in government where we're trying to transform that, right? We're trying to figure out how to give people who need more, and not be hyper-focused on procedural justice, but more focused on achieving social justice, right? That's kind of where this whole system is moving to, because we've seen the disparities, they're there. We have to do something about it. But ultimately, I would argue where we want to go is beyond equity. We want to move from equality, where most of us are now, into equity, and then eventually into justice. And justice isn't about handing out ladders and resources. It's about fixing the systems that are driving the inequities. It's straightening the tree. So that's the work. That's the real meaningful work that all of us really have to engage in if we're going to decrease disparities in our state. All right. So here are some of the tools that you all have, that we have, to get this done. We can establish expectations. How many folks on here fund somebody? I think you all do. I hope you all do. John, are you with me? How many people fund people? John is repping for everybody. I appreciate it. All right.
Your hands are up.
How are you in your RFPs and your solicitations establishing an expectation for equity? We're going to come back to that. You can develop knowledge in your workforce. I know that there's a learning collaborative with the ADAM boards run by OACPA that focuses on health equity. We talked about prioritizing funding, but you can collect and analyze and use your data. You can lead with regulation and policy. You can engage in innovative partnerships, and you can provide technical assistance and create structural change. So like the Ohio Department of Health created an Office of Health Opportunity. That's a structural change. So I think all of you know that social determinants are a thing. That they're important and they need to be addressed. And so do the local health districts. But what I find in talking with them, or what I found, is that not everybody's on the same page about what the role of the local health department is in addressing those social determinants. And I bet you're struggling with the same thing. What is my role in this? I'm not a police agency. I can't do, what can I do about incarceration? What can I do about domestic violence? What can I, and so the challenge really is figuring out where you want to be in this space and pushing yourself. You know, there's a kind of a continuum. We have folks who do things like, I understand that nutrition is a barrier to people participating in my program. And so I'm opening a food pantry on site. That's a wonderful thing to do. You're not addressing a social determinant. That's charity. It's not changing a system, right? It's supporting a system that doesn't work, right? That there's something else. Why does this person have a lack of access to nutrition? What's the driver of that? Then we have health departments on the other end of the spectrum who are like actively in the nutrition space, advocating for changes to SNAP, advocating for changes to where grocery stores are located, right? So there's a continuum, and wherever you are on that continuum is fine. Our office is here to help you and the local health departments figure out where you are and work with you and with the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services to move to whatever that next level is. All right. So we have a grant to do some work. We have a little over $31 million to focus on health equity in this state. And we've been spending that money. We have some data work. We're focused on developing new partnerships, and we're focused on developing champions around health equity in multiple systems. But today I'm going to talk to you guys mostly about data. Patty's going to talk to you mostly about data. So real quick, we really started looking at this data through COVID, because we had like 2 vials of vaccine for a state of 11.5 million people. It's like, who gets in line first? Where do we put the opportunities? How do we meet people where they are? And so we did a lot of dashboarding. One of the dashboards I think you all may find of interest is that we developed is understanding where death and hospitalization happened at the neighborhood level. So which communities had the most people die? You know, that's earnings lost out of a household. That's a grandparent lost. That's a mom or a dad lost out of that community. So we really wanted to understand where were the communities with the highest impact. So we do have this data available if you all are interested, because I do think there's implications for mental health and what it means. What are the ripple effects of this pandemic as we go forward? So I wanted to make you aware of that resource. Why at the neighborhood level? Why is our stuff looking at census tract? I know a lot of people work in zip code, but I will tell you that, and you all know this, I'm sure, neighborhoods are drastically different from one another. So even if 2 neighborhoods are both struggling with heart disease, like they have horrible heart disease outcomes, we could go to those neighborhoods and talk to people and find out that what's driving that are completely different things, right? So I'm gonna give you an example of how the social determinants play out, how they differ from neighborhood to neighborhood. This is Central Ohio, Bexley. Anybody here familiar with Bexley? Bexley is is a community that I would consider to have a lot of social capital. These folks literally fought McDonald's Corporation and won. Like McDonald's wanted to build a McDonald's in Bexley, and Bexley was like, and no. That is social capital. And you can see this study is a great study, great dashboard, Opportunity Insights dashboard, Robert Wood Johnson and US Census, a great partnership. And what they did was they took kids, they looked at who was born in a neighborhood, and then they looked at them at the age of 35 and compiled their outcomes. Very cool. So at the age of 35, a child born in Bexley is making on average $73,000 a year, not likely to be incarcerated. They have a spouse who's working. They have an employment rate of 84%. You know, almost 60% of them are married, which we know is a huge protective factor to poverty. But then when you come next door, just next door, boom, boom, Franklin Park. That's my neighborhood. I walk to the grocery store in Bexley. So this is not a far distance because I am not a walker. Fitness is not the top of the list right now. But I walk to the store in Bexley. It's, you know, way less than a mile. And look at the outcomes for kids born in my neighborhood. $22,000 a year in income. That's a huge difference. What does that mean for their life, what they have access to, what they're experiencing? Incarceration rate is over 5%. Fraction married is only 16%. And the employment rate is much lower as well. You know what else big difference is? Bexley's really white, Franklin Park really not. We can also see that the poverty rate, it's like a 30 percentage point difference in poverty between these two communities that are right next to one another. Job growth is completely inverted. This is the context. It's the context that health is happening in, and they're drastically different from neighborhood to neighborhood. So a lot of our work, you will see, focuses on neighborhoods or census tracts. Any questions about that before I jump into the Ohio Health Improvement Zone?
I don't see any hands.
Okay. All right, I'm going to pause. I can't believe there are no questions. Are you guys all just simultaneously working and do it all the time? Diane said, not me. I know.
No.
Thank you. Okay. Ohio Health Improvement Zones. So the CDC compiles a score for every census tract in the country based on vulnerability. They look at these 16 factors here, and they create an indexed number. And they give every community in the country a score on a scale of 0 to 1. 0, you are in a Bexley. You are a strong, resilient community. You don't have a lot of mobile homes. You don't have overcrowded housing. People are educated. 2-parent households, not a high concentration of people with disabilities. You're a community that's ready to respond to a disaster. You're resilient. If you're a 1, you're the opposite of that. You have a lot of barriers to being able to be resilient. Okay, so what we did in Ohio is we decided any community in our state, any neighborhood that has a score of 0.75 or higher is a focus area for us. They are an Ohio Health Improvement Zone. Anybody want to just take us, get your chat fingers ready? How many do you think we have? We have about 2,900 census tracts in the state overall. How many of those neighborhoods do you think fall into this Ohio Health Improvement Zone category? 0.75 or higher, very vulnerable. Take a guess. No wrong answer. I mean, well, there are wrong answers, but we don't care. So 30%, Patty says. How many would that be? Don't do percentages. I can't do math.
I'm cheating because I think I remember what the percentage is.
I'm a policy person. Anybody else want to take a guess?
25.
25? 250?
Oh, 25%.
Oh, 25%. See,
Yeah.
A
what is
quarter.
25% of 2,900? I have no idea.
I'm pretty certain
all.
it's like 26%.
All right, so we have
That's
some
too high.
guesses. I will tell you it's 703,
Out of how many?
2,900 are
Seven.
in the most vulnerable category in the nation. They have the highest scores in the country.
I love it. He's going to do the math. So Chad says 2,500. And Chad, it really does-
24%.
24,
Yep,
you were
see.
so close. John wins.
Yes.
I love it.
But when you
Okay.
move that number, while Jamie is talking here, when you move that number to 50%, it's about 70% of our communities.
Yeah, when you
those
get the
numbers.
score 0.50 or
Mhm.
more. So we have a lot of communities that are less than, you know. Gotcha, Chad. All right. So we have this score. I'm gonna try here to pull this up. I can show you the tool. It's taking a second to load, but you can look at this data at your county level. And you can filter on kind of category. See these categories here? So you can see which of my communities are most vulnerable due to socioeconomic status, which are most vulnerable due to housing and transportation barriers, etc. So you can drill right into that. This is not loading for me, so I'm going to keep moving because I want to give Patty plenty of time to talk about the social determinants of health dashboard. So Patty, could you drop the link to the Ohio Health Improvement Zones in the chat so people can take a look at that? But you can look at this at the county level. Every county has a score too, so you can see where you are. I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing with the Health Improvement Zone data at the Ohio Department of Health. So we just made a rounded $7 million investment in the Ohio Health Improvement Zones. We're doing these projects called Ohio Health Improvement Zone projects because we're super creative. And essentially, they're trying to infuse equity in a meaningful way into understanding barriers to health. So, right, I came from mental health and addiction services. When I came to the Department of Health, I realized we have a lot of really smart epidemiologists who are looking at data, and they'll say, hey, this neighborhood, this census tract, or this zip code has a heart disease problem. And then we go to a list of evidence-based practices, and we find things like a community garden and a walking club. And then we go into that community to implement a community garden and a walking club, which kind of makes sense on the surface. But we've left equity out of the equation. So instead of going into a community to start a community garden and a walking club, maybe take a beat and go talk to the community and ask them what they think their biggest barrier to health is. So if I knock on your door and I ask you, hey, what do you think your biggest barrier to health is? And you don't say heart disease, then I don't implement a strategy to address heart disease because you're the expert on your health. If you say it's community violence, I want to pay for community violence interruption. That is how we share power with communities. That is how we step back from being paternalistic, because that's what we've been doing. We've been going in like, not only do we know what your problem is, look at our data, we know how to fix it because we have this list of super great strategies that worked in like California. So just taking a second to center equity in your work and doing meaningful community engagement. I had the opportunity, where's Cleveland? Anybody? I had the opportunity to visit Sisters of Charity. They had an awesome project called Coffee on the Corner. And they literally just set up coffee stands on the corner in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the country and handed out coffee to people and talked to them. What's up? What's going on? What's your experience? And they use that to help drive their strategy, right? So that's what this work is. We've invested this money. We have several communities funded across the state, several of the Ohio Health Improvement Zones, where we're working with organizations to do this meaningful engagement. And then what communities tell us they need, that's what we're going to pay for. So I don't know how it's going to turn out. And when we were pitching this idea to the governor, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. And his response was, well, we'll learn something that doesn't work. And I think that's absolutely right. This is innovative. It's a new way of thinking about public health, and it's a new way of trying to operationalize equity. So we will definitely keep you all in the loop as these unfold. All right. We also are using those Ohio Health Improvement Zones to prioritize our solicitations. So in our solicitations, when we put out RFPs, we are telling people, if you want to do business with us, if you want our money, you have to tell us how you're going to prioritize the health improvement zones. What's your plan? We're using this to drive our mobile vaccination strategies. I have 6 mobile vaccination units across the state right now. We're already completely full for October. We're very busy. I think since July, we've vaccinated over 2,100 people in really hard to access communities, right? Because we're going into the Ohio Health Improvement Zones with the lowest vaccination rates. So we're trying to make sure we're filling that gap in those communities. We're also using this data to prioritize schools. So we created, using the Ohio Health Improvement Zone data, a list of priority schools. And so these are the schools that are in an Ohio Health Ohio Health Improvement Zone and have free and reduced lunch. 40% or more of their kids are on free reduced lunch. And we also, just for kicks, added in, we have a separate list that adds broadband access, like low broadband. And so right now, we have an, I don't know if you guys know this, we have an unprecedented investment. It's like what this adds up to, $27 million in expanding school-based health across the state. Largest investment the state has ever made in school-based health. And guess what? The only school districts eligible for this funding are these folks, right? We have limited resources in government. And it's not even our money, it's the taxpayers' dollars. So we're trying our best to be good stewards and put the funding where it is going to do the most good, where we can get the biggest impact. All right, so I'm going to shut up for a second. We're going to take like 2 minutes. I'm going to force you to talk. Anybody have some ideas off the top of your head on some ways that your programs can use the Ohio Health Improvement Zones? And I'm going to, while you're noodling, I'm going to show you a little bit more of the dashboard. Anybody at all? Anybody want to come off mute? I don't mind an awkward silence. So this is the, oh, Kelly's coming on camera. Come on, Kelly. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, well, I don't have a great answer because I was just having to transfer from my phone and back because I was having computer issues. So I haven't been able to look at the map. I've just been, do you mind putting it back up on screen? I'll try and fumble through an answer.
Yeah, where are you from?
I'm from the Franklin County Atom Board, so I think we are very impacted by this.
So every county is very impacted.
Yeah.
But we're going to take a look at the county dashboard. This is the zones by county. So Franklin, this is the blue ones are the most vulnerable.
Okay.
The darker the blue, the higher the vulnerability score. I'm going to go back to, but wait, let me go back to the county because I want to show you something. We can filter. So overall vulnerability in our state looks like this. If we're just looking at county data, everybody see themselves on there? If we filter to socioeconomic, like who's vulnerable because of a socioeconomic, issue, that score, you can see it shift. If we look at who's vulnerable because you have a lot of folks who speak English less than well, or who are minorities, we can see that shift. Not surprisingly, that ESL, or speaking English less than well, scores are really high along the lake. If we look at who's vulnerable because of housing and transportation, it's really kind of all over the place. And that's a good, just to be able to say, here I am in comparison to other counties. But what you all want to know is, what about inside of my county, right? So if I pick Franklin, here's Franklin County's map. Overall score for Franklin County, you can kind of see which neighborhoods you have clusters of vulnerability. This probably isn't shocking to you. And we look and say, where are the minority folks and folks who may need special care with language access? Look at that. It's everywhere. When we look at household composition, let's look at socioeconomics. You can see it shift. So this is a great tool. I hope you guys explore it. Think about what you can do with it. I shared some of the things that we're doing. Yeah. So I'm going to keep it moving here because we only have a few minutes. No, that is the wrong screen. I have too many screens. All right. Some of the other work we're doing around data, so we're trying to elevate the voice of the community. Public health is really focused, a lot of what we do, on surveys, like survey data that we get. But guess who's way underrepresented in survey data? Take a guess. Minorities and rural communities, the places where we have the highest disparities. So we're paying to oversample. We're working on that. We're also adding a racial experiences module to BRFIS this time around. So we're excited about that. We're working with OMAS on a partnership to expand the OES to vulnerable school districts and communities. So excited about that. We're building out some other options for understanding demographics. So I'm a Black woman. I'm originally from Appalachia. My family's been here for like hundreds of years, pre-slavery, before slavery was on the mainland. To put me in the same category with a woman who just got here from Somalia, a war-torn country on the other side of the earth, makes no sense. We're in the same category, though we're both Black, and we're not having the same experience. We're not utilizing systems the same way. We're just not. And so we need greater transparency into who we are actually serving and into our communities, and to make people more visible so that we can do a better job of culturally competent care. So we're working on that. We have a pilot right now in our home visiting program to collect additional data. So if you say I'm Black, or let's say you say I'm Hispanic, Latino. Okay, the next question is your country of origin Guatemala? Is it Mexico? Is it Spain? I don't know, so figuring out a little more detail so we could do a better job of meeting people where they are. So we're working on that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Patty, and she's going to talk about our newest tool, the social determinants of health, which I think is awesome. And I'm going to shut up and let her do it. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. And so one of sorry, can you keep your slides?
Oh,
I
yeah.
can bring mine up.
No, I got it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So one of the greatest differences between this community well-being dashboard and the OHIS dashboard is that we're not rating communities. And that was really important to us to make sure that the data displayed will help communities understand what opportunities are available to them. And so, again, this dashboard is primarily done by Census Track. There are more than 120 different metrics measured in the dashboard. There are some data that's in here that's available just at the county level, and those generally are around employment, so like unemployment rates and income, those types of things. And then it's organized by the 5 SDOH SDOH domains as they're organized with the Healthy People 2030. So if you're not familiar with that particular document, some of this might not make sense to you, but will help bring it back in to context for you. And it's also publicly available. So anybody who has access to the internet can find our dashboard, can take a look at the data and what it's conveying there. So Jamie, can I have the next slide, please? Yeah.
Well, I think that's it. You were demoing from here.
All right, so hang on a second. Let me share my screen. I'm going to snag it from Jamie. I already have the dashboard up. So really what I want to do, because I don't have a lot of time to deep dive into the data, is orient you to how it's organized. I already put the link in the chat so that you guys can play in it as well and show you some features about how you can get access to the data. When you go to the page, what I want you to know is you're going to come up on this details tab. You need to click on visualize to get yourself to the map. All right. There's a couple of items here on the very front page that you guys need to know about. First and foremost is this CSV file. For those of you or your teammates at the office who are really interested in data, this is a huge download. Every data element that's in here, you guys can download. You can play with the data in your own way, make your own maps, which is really great. This little guy here, whenever you see it and you click on it, it will tell you exactly where we gathered the data from, right? So you can see the footnotes will give you the source. It also has across the dashboard definitions, so you understand why some of the data may be a little bit different than some data that you're used to seeing. So a really good example in this is when we go to look at the population, and when I click on demographics over here, is that the census tract data that we're using only represents Ohioans that are not in an institutional setting, right? So you can see our number over here is 11.4 million. Our most recent data numbers are 11.7 million in Ohio, and our estimates, for most of you know that there are 3 sets of data, right, are 11.9. And so those numbers, those last 2 numbers, include folks who might be institutionalized in a hospital and or jail type setting. The census tract, because we know how it gathers, or I'm sorry, the Census Bureau rather, because it knows how we gather information, knows that those folks don't get surveyed in the census. And so all of the data in the dashboard is currently publicly available. Most of it comes from the census or the ACS. There's also some kids count data in here and a couple of other state level types of data that's publicly available. And so this particular area here in the demographics, we think it would be really beneficial to all of our sister agencies and local organizations because it helps you tell the story of Ohio, and you can filter, as Jamie showed in the OHIS, by county, and you can also look by census tract, so everybody can tell a story of who's in their community. But the one thing that you'll see as you move through this dashboard is that it's unique in that we spent a lot of time contextualizing the data. There's a lot of words on it, and that was very purposeful. And so it's organized, as you'll see, there's a definition for what SDOH means. That carries through the entire dashboard. And so we usually refer to that as our level 1 story. The level 2 story gives some information and description around each of these domains. So you can see the geographic profiles, which is what we're on, and then economic vitality, clear over to social and community experiences. This language here changes so that people will understand why each of those subject matters are important to people's health. And then third, the level 3 story really dives into why these additional areas are important. And so I'm just going to move over to economic vitality so you can see how the context changes and why it's important. And we have learned that the dashboard is a smidgen slower in the morning than it is in the afternoon. Don't know why. So let's give it a second here. And while it does that, what I want to show you is back up here, you can see this SDOH index. I already have it open. We use this as the table of contents, so you can go see exactly what metric is captured in each of the domain areas, the data source, in the measure, right? So you can see the vast majority of the information is census tract, and then there are a couple that are purely county information. Let's go back and see. There we go. It's loaded. All right, so in the economic vitality, right, we talk about why it's important that people are working, why it's important and what protective factors there are as it pertains to income and access to healthcare. All right, so this talks about poverty, and one of the things that I'll explain to you when you click on that eye there is the definitions that we use for poverty, because what we know is across programs at the state and federal level, the definition of poverty is different. So it's really important to come to this area, figure out the resource to make sure that you're operating under the same level of poverty as maybe a grant that you're applying for, or a program in your area. And the other thing I want to show you is that in every one of the domains, there's this data and research tab. And this is really important because what we were mindful of as we were building the dashboard is that we didn't want to replicate work that's already been done. And but we did need to cite it and give sources for it, right? So anything that's publicly available on the Data Ohio portal as it pertains to employment or any of the other domains is available here. So the unemployment claims dashboard. If you guys have never gone into the labor market information, it's its own page, and it has really great information there. And I challenge each of you to kind of go in and play in it because there's some really great data. And I know that that's where Jamie grew up for a minute over at JFS. And so she's intricately familiar with the data that's available there. But this other area over here links back to the state health assessment, which is of course really important over at ODH. And so this year, when you click on any of these, we'll show you what the Ohio Department of Health is doing around these areas as it pertains to poverty and income. And you'll see that as you go forward. And so a couple of reports that you guys are intricately familiar with when you get over here to healthcare and access is you'll see the suicide reports over there. You'll see the overdose reports there, and any other publicly available data OMOS might have, or that you might be interested in out of Medicaid, you'll find over here in this Data Ohio portal. And so I know that I moved through that really quickly. But if you guys have any questions, I want to give like a minute or two for you to ask, and offer an opportunity if you guys have lunch and learns where you might want to dive into a specific data set. I'll be happy to come back and do a little bit more in-depth overview of the dashboard so you can see what's there. You know, these chronic diseases and preventative health services are areas that might really be of interest to you guys. And then I think that we would love to hear from you guys about how you might use the dashboard in program development and measuring program outcomes. And that's something that we're really interested in. And we're really interested in the feedback, not only how you use it, but if there's another publicly available data set that you're like, man, this dashboard really needs to have it. We would love to have that conversation to see how we can support the work that you're doing and the local NMH boards and service providers. So Jamie, I'll go ahead and, oh, wait. Can I have one more second? So two things I didn't get to show you, right? So you're able to look by county. You're also able to look, once you click on it, you'll see the census tract. But there's one other function of this tool that I absolutely love, and it's the lasso function, right? And so for those of you that might just be working, your NMH board might encompass 2 counties. You can circle them over here. But say you're doing something at the state level, all of you want to target something, but you're really concerned about, you know, this 35% mark. We'll just use arthritis as an example. So you can click and you can lasso these. And then my map over here on the left is going to change, and it's going to show us the areas that we need to target. And so this is really great. It's a really great tool for you guys to use. The depressions in there is something that you guys would be really interested in. All right, Jamie, I promise I'll stop sharing my screen now so you can finish.
No, you can keep it up. I think this is the best part of the presentation. I took too much time. So I don't know if there are any questions for us. We do have our contact information.
Yeah.
We'll send out the deck, so you'll have that. I think that, you know, we're just trying to make sure, I'm sharing the wrong screen, but we're just trying to make sure that you all are aware of these resources and tools. And if you need anything from us, you know, give us a holler. Yeah, thank you.
Jamie,
Thanks,
thank
Chad.
you. And
Thank you.
Patty, thank you as well. We will send out, I will send out the contact information to all of you.
Thank you.
With these resources. Patty provided them the links in the chat, so we'll capture that and I'll send that out to all of you so you have that information. I think, and Jamie, you and I really didn't have an opportunity to talk about this. I mean, one of the reasons why Director Chris felt this was such a good information to have, other than, just great information to have, is there's a focus on equity in this version of the community assessment and plan. And we're asking the boards, specifically during the assessment process, is to actually identify any populations that may be experiencing a higher level of disparities. And then also, what factors do social determinants of health play into really the behavioral health environments as a whole within their board communities? So I think this is really great information. I mean, in and of itself as a standalone, really great information. But as we are looking at focusing on equity across the entire span of the community assessment and plan, I think this is very targeted information that Director Chris felt would be very helpful for the boards to have as they complete this process. So I appreciate you and Patty taking the time to kind of walk us through this. And maybe later on this fall, we can have you back and really try to kind of dive into these maps a little bit more, and seeing what data is out there and help the boards maybe access some of this. So we do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And we'd be happy to come back and talk about the data and other resources as you all are thinking about. There was a racism and child welfare report, and as a result, we have been working on work around that. And I think some of that you could benefit from in this process, some of the recommendations and thoughts. And so I think there are many things that we could probably come back and share for that purpose, Chad. So thank you.
We'll work that out. So thank you again, Jamie, Patty. We appreciate the information.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So for those, we had quite a number of folks that kind of joined us late this morning as we started the process. So I want to go through the updates really quickly one more time, and just to reiterate, I will be staying on at least another 15-20 minutes to make sure that any questions you have about the CAP, we have an opportunity for you to get answered. So just to review the general updates I provided this morning. Just a reminder that the crisis survey is due tomorrow by close of business. That includes the survey itself and the question 2 spreadsheets. Other updates we talked about, our friends with HPIO, we set some dates for those webinars and resources that we've been discussing over the last couple of calls. They'll be presenting 2 live webinars. The first will be Thursday, October 27th from 12:30 to 1:30. I will send out the calendar invite for those. That one specifically, we'll make sure that it's recorded and placed on our website. We have a tentative hold date for Wednesday, November 30th from 2:30 to 3:30 for another one. The one on Thursday, October 27th, will be about equity and disparities. It'll be joint information from HPIO and also from our diversity and cultural competency work group team here within the department. So they'll be collaborating on webinar resources there. So that will be Thursday, October 27, 12:30 to 1:30. I'll send out the invitation to that. We'll make sure that that's recorded and placed on our website as well. We will have a date in November, tentatively November 30th from 2:30 to 3:30. We'll also have a date in December and January. So we have 4 total webinars from our friends at HPIO. They're also working on a couple of toolkits that will be available to you as well. One of those being around equity, diversity, and disparities information. So that's just a brief recap of the information. I know a few of you logged in a little bit late this morning, but I at least wanted to get that information out to you. With that being said, I will stick around for the next 15-20 minutes for you to answer any questions that you have. I will stop recording now. So if not, I hope everyone has a great day, and we will see you back here in a couple of weeks. Thank you.